Zimbabwe has become the latest African country to welcome Elon Musk's internet service provider. Zimbabwe are capable of spearheading game-changing first-of-a-kind innovations that challenge the world's traditional ways of doing things. President Wagwa said no one can take away that capability. A new tech company has just made its debut in the South African nation of Zimbabwe thanks to inventor Maxwell Chikumbutso. Africa is now producing an estimated 30,000 self-powering cars using groundbreaking technology that doesn't rely on fuel or charging stations. Chud's groundbreaking innovations. He calls it a self-powering electric vehicle. This game-changing invention will disrupt the global auto industry, especially for electric car giants like Tesla, with billions invested in batteries and charging infrastructure. How will Elon Musk take the news, and will this new tech shoot Africa to the top of the automotive industry? Join us as we reveal the Zimbabwean invention threatening Musk's empire. Self-powering tech revolution from Zimbabwe. Africa is stepping into a new era of car manufacturing, and it's happening faster than most people expected. For years, the continent has been seen as a place where cars are mostly imported, with only a few countries assembling vehicles locally, but that story is changing. Countries like Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, and South Africa have significantly progressed in local automobile production, but something extraordinary is happening in Zimbabwe, something that could completely change transportation in Africa and worldwide. The catch is that Elon Musk is not happy about it. You see, while most of the world is pushing for electric vehicles, Africa doesn't even have charging infrastructure. That is, scarce electricity supply is unreliable in many areas, and the cost of lithium batteries remains high. So the Zimbabweans came up with something that will blow your mind. Keep watching to find out. Since there is limited electricity and weak charging infrastructure, Africans have found it difficult to embrace electric cars. But what if there was a way to power a vehicle without fuel or even plug it into an outlet? That's exactly what Zimbabwe inventor Maxwell Chikumbutso came up with. He has created a self-powered car without gasoline, diesel, or even traditional electricity. Instead, it relies on energy from radio waves. At first, the idea of a car powered by radio waves might sound unbelievable, but this is real technology. An electric car which, he says, converts radio frequencies into energy. The key to this invention lies in a revolutionary micronic energy device, a system that can capture and convert radio frequencies into continuous electrical energy. So how does it work? Well, it's quite simple. The car can generate power with access to these frequencies, eliminating the need for external charging or refueling, unlike conventional electric vehicles which require extensive charging infrastructure. This technology bypasses that limitation completely. This invention will change the face of African transportation in ways we could never imagine. African have always depended on fuel for transportation. Many African nations rely on imported fuel, which drives transportation costs and makes it expensive for people to move around, even for those considering electric vehicles. Charging stations are rare outside of major cities, and the high cost of electricity can still make owning an EV impractical. But if cars could power themselves, all of these concerns would disappear. People would no longer have to worry about fluctuating fuel prices, power outages affecting charging, or the high cost of batteries. Aside from personal vehicles, this technology could transform public transportation in most African cities. Minibuses and taxis are the backbone of urban mobility. These vehicles operate daily, consuming large amounts of fuel and contributing to pollution. If self-powered technology were applied to public transport, it could drastically lower costs for operators and passengers alike. Taxi drivers wouldn't need to spend money on fuel. Bus fares could drop. Those EVs are well known for saving money on gas, and air pollution in crowded cities could be significantly reduced. That's not all. The benefits would also extend to rural areas where transportation has always been a struggle. Many remote villages cannot access gas because they are far from gas stations. Farmers often face challenges getting their produce to markets, and students sometimes walk long distances to school due to a lack of affordable transportation. A self-powered vehicle could change all of that. These cars could provide reliable transportation in even the most isolated regions without fuel or charging stations. Medical teams could reach rural communities more easily. Businesses could expand their reach, and mobility would become accessible to a much larger population and an economy. Africa spends billions of each year on fuel imports. A shift towards self-powered vehicles could redirect that money into local economies instead manufacturing such cars locally would also create jobs, boost technological innovation, and position Africa as a leader in clean energy transportation. If the technology proves scalable, it could even turn Africa into an exporter of self-powered vehicles, which Elon Musk doesn't want to see. Remember, Musk has poured billions into electric vehicles and charging infrastructure. He believes that Tesla will dominate the future of mobility and clean energy, but Africa's breakthrough in alternative energy-powered cars like Maxwell Chikumbutso micronic energy device challenges that vision we have. Invented in Zimbabwe, it is called a microsonic energy device. The scale at which this tech will change the world will surprise you, and that's where we are headed. Maxwell's invention and the rest of the world. For starters, Africa has been flooded with imported used cars. For decades, many vehicles on the continent's roads started their lives in Europe, Asia, or North America before being shipped off to African ports. Let's face it, these second-hand imports have been an affordable option for many, but they come with problems such as high maintenance costs, lack of spare parts, and environmental concerns due to older high-emission engines. But Maxwell's invention shows that the tide is turning. Africa is no longer just a consumer of foreign-made vehicles, it's becoming a manufacturer in its own right. A new era is coming where African nations are designing and building cars tailored to their needs. Industries and economies aside from Zimbabwe, other countries have emerged as leaders in this transformation. Take Morocco, for instance, which has a large vehicle manufacturing industry and exports cars to Europe and beyond with production plants from international giants like Renault and Stellantis. Morocco also assembles cars and produces parts and components. The country's strategic location and trade agreements have made it a key hub for European car exports. Then comes South Africa. South Africa has a strong industrial base, and major brands like BMW, Volkswagen, and Toyota have operated manufacturing plants there for years, exporting vehicles to different parts of the world. But beyond foreign manufacturers, local brands like MZA are beginning to emerge, aiming to create cars specifically designed for African conditions. South Africa's combination of skilled labor, established infrastructure, and government incentives has kept its automotive industry thriving and positioned it as a regional leader. If you feel inspired by Morocco and South Africa's achievements, the next country we want to reveal will blow your mind. Nigeria, Africa's most populous country, is another rising force in vehicle manufacturing. With a rapidly growing middle class and an increasing demand for locally made products, Nigeria has taken bold steps to reduce dependence on used car imports. Companies like Inisan Vehicle Manufacturing produce cars, buses, and trucks designed to benefit the African consumer. These big buses you are seeing here lined up, this is where they were all produced. By focusing on durability, affordability, and easy maintenance, these vehicles address the unique challenges of African roads, which often include rough terrains and extreme weather conditions. The Nigerian government has also introduced policies to encourage local production, reducing tariffs on locally made vehicles while imposing higher duties on imported used cars. What sets African-made vehicles apart is their design, which considers local conditions, unlike many imported cars that struggle with poor road infrastructure, extreme heat, and inconsistent fuel quality. Vehicles produced in Africa are built for these challenges. For example, many locally made cars have reinforced suspensions to handle rough and unpaved roads. Engines are designed to run efficiently on the fuel type available in African markets, reducing dependency on expensive imported fuel grades. Some manufacturers also incorporate solar-powered features, addressing energy challenges in regions with common fuel and electricity shortages. The shift to manufacturing vehicles locally has created massive jobs, from factory workers assembling cars to engineers designing new models, and business owners distributing vehicles across the continent. Thousands of direct and indirect jobs are being created, providing opportunities for young Africans to develop engineering, mechanics, and high-tech manufacturing skills. But there is no guarantee that Zimbabwe's self-driven cars will take over the market soon, and you are about to find out why. Keep watching. Challenges with Zimbabwe's self-driven cars. Zimbabwe is making bold moves, but like any revolution, challenges come with progress. While self-powering and locally Manufactured vehicles are shaking up the market. The journey ahead is far from smooth as the world moves toward cleaner energy. Africa is exploring multiple options. Electric vehicles have gained traction with companies in South Africa and Nigeria that are working on local production, but EVs come with challenges, such as expensive lithium-ion batteries and a lack of charging stations in many parts of the continent. This is where self-powered cars like those developed in Zimbabwe provide a groundbreaking alternative using radio waves or other renewable energy sources. These vehicles don't need charging altogether. Meanwhile, some African countries focus on biofuels using crops like sugar cane and gatria to produce cleaner fuel alternatives. With an abundance of natural resources, Africa has the potential to lead in sustainable vehicle technology without relying on foreign energy sources. The question is whether governments and private investors will push hard enough to make these options mainstream. The good news is that Africa's auto industry isn't isolated. Global automakers are beginning to recognize the potential of the continent's growing market. European and Asian companies are partnering with African manufacturers to set up local plants and production lines. We mentioned earlier that Morocco has attracted major investments from Renault and Stellantis, while South Africa remains a key hub for global brands. But as African automakers rise, the balance of power could shift. Local companies are working on cars designed specifically for African roads and conditions, making them more appealing than imported models. Foreign automakers may have to rethink their strategies if self-powered vehicles become widely adopted. Will they partner with African innovators or compete against them? That remains to be seen. That is not all. Despite the progress, Zimbabwe's self-powered vehicles may not reach the markets in large quantities. That's because of the supply chain. Many parts used in Zimbabwe-made vehicles are still imported. That means production costs are high and vulnerable to global disruptions. To be a real game changer, they must develop a local supply chain for key components like microchips and steel, but it requires significant investment. Talking about money, Zimbabwe doesn't seem to have much of it currently. The problem doesn't end with that. Many African governments have no plan to support the automotive industry and ensure safety and environmental standards. Most countries have outdated policies that make it difficult for local car manufacturers to compete with imports, so Zimbabwe has to develop clearer business-friendly policies to help local automakers scale production and reach a wider market. That reminds us of the state of infrastructure in Africa. Many African roads are in poor condition, and transportation networks are underdeveloped. Without proper infrastructure, even the best cars can struggle to reach customers. Zimbabwe must invest heavily in road networks to support the long-term success of the industry. Don't be fooled by the problems. Africa's automotive industry is still heading towards its peak. Countries are learning from each other, adapting new technologies and pushing the boundaries of what's possible with innovations like self-powered vehicles. Africa has the potential to leap ahead of traditional auto markets like Tesla and Toyota. Will Africa become a global leader in sustainable car production? Can local automakers outpace imports and dominate the market? We can't answer for certain, but one certain thing is that the revolution is only beginning and the